In this video, you'll see how an oyster goes from this,
that's a 2mm oyster,
to this,
These get pretty dang big.
and even this.
They have a champagne cream sauce with caviar on top.
Can we try that out?
But first, let's back up. As our journey continues, our East Coast seafood tour is taking us from Crabbers in Maryland
My God, this thing is gigantic.
all the way here to the oyster capital in Virginia.
Eat it raw, nothing on it to start.
Nothing on it. This is full of seawater.
This multi-million-dollar industry is responsible for the harvesting of millions of oysters each year.
Virginia is the top 3 oyster producers in the country.
But bringing these mollusks to maturity isn't as straightforward as you might think.
Even in the same body of water, the way the sun hits it, the depth of the water, the oysters can have a different flavor.
Today, I'm on a mission to see how farmers raise the eastern oyster, a high-end delicacy for some,
Oh my God.
and a complete nightmare for others.
Every year, some people die from eating oysters that are raw. Is that correct?
It all starts right here on the water.
How important is oyster farming to Virginia?
It's essential. It's a core staple coming out of the region.
Meet Tom, former broke college kid turned fanatic oysterpreneur. Today, he'll show me the entire oyster rearing process, from farm to mouth.
Virginia is the top 3 oyster producers in the country. The Chesapeake Bay is one of the largest bodies of water that houses oysters in the world.
The Chesapeake Bay is the USA's largest estuary, where the river meets the sea. It crosses 6 states, including Virginia. Its unique blend of fresh water and salt water creates a dynamic, nutrient-rich environment, perfect for raising the highest grade of oysters in the world. But how does the oyster raising process begin?
So everything starts with the nursery.
Correct.
Can we check that out first?
Absolutely, let's do it.
This is Oyster Seed Holdings, and this is owner, researcher Mike.
Oysters have a 2-part life cycle. They have a larval phase first and then the adult phase second. Inside in the hatchery is where we do all the larval work. Once they get big enough, we can get them out of larval culture and put them into a setting process that allows them to get through metamorphosis. Once we get them through metamorphosis, they kind of get kicked out of the hatchery, out here where Mother Nature's providing all the food, and we'll put them into these tanks and flow lots of water past them.
So these are all little baby oysters.
They are.
At this stage, these tiny babies are ready to be shipped out to farmers like Tom, who will grow them to full size over a matter of years.
All right, so we've seen the nursery, but from here, we're gonna see how you cultivate the oysters right here in the ocean.
Let's go see it.
So right now we've just entered the oyster field. There are a lot more pelicans than I expected. I think that could be a side business. Pelican meat. This is my second time being to an oyster farm. The first time was actually in Vietnam, and let me tell you, it was quite a bit different. In Vietnam, they have these giant wood lattices made from bamboo. From the lattices, they have some strings or ropes suspended that the oysters are then connected to, and you can kind of pull them up in clumps. This is completely different.
What's different about what we do is we are raising these oysters at the surface of the water column, where the food is the most plentiful. The first 18 inches is where the most light penetration is and the most water flow is. So there's more algae available. When you suspend them, the further you get into the water column, the less algae you're gonna have.
So we're about to pull this one up. What's gonna be inside here?
These are gonna be our oysters that we put out at 1/4 inch. That was about 90 days ago. So let's pull them up and see what they look like.
Tom exclusively farms East Coast native oysters.
If you can help guide that on there.
Okay, yeah, that's on that side.
And we're up. Sonny, we also could have used the crane. Like, what are we thinking here? You know, we gotta use our backs.
I thought this was a sailboat.
These bivalves have the special ability to filter and clean 50 gallons of water each day, absorbing nutrients from algae and plankton.
You look in there.
Oh, wow.
In these nutrient-rich waters, they can grow from a 1/4 inch to this in as short as 90 days.
When these went in initially, they were just big enough to not come out of this net.
Yes, exactly.
But these are still the little babies.
These are tiny.
Some oysters, blessed with good genes, can grow at shocking speeds. This bag also contains 90-day-old oysters, but some have already reached their mid-stage of development.
So these are quite a bit bigger, and actually, some of them look like they're fully grown.
I would call that a market oyster.
You might think that managing thousands of oysters, all growing and maturing at different speeds, would be quite a logistical challenge, and it might be, unless you have one of these. Tom's very own processing facility. Once a bag of oysters fills up, it's brought here.
The oysters are being carried up this hopper, and they're being broken down into 3 sizes. So we have the first drop, second drop, and the third drop. The first and second drop are much further away to market size. The third drop is very close to market.
Every oyster here is categorized according to size. Then you put it back in the mesh bag with similar oysters of the same size, throw it back in the water.
Correct.
On average, an oyster makes 5 round trips between this tumbler and the water, and eventually they plump up to their full adult size. Now they're ready to be shucked and eaten alive.
This is quite a bit bigger than the other ones we just saw. From nursery to becoming this size, how long is that?
18 to 24 months.
That's an incredible amount of effort.
It's actually relatively fast for the industry. Up in Canada, sometimes those oysters take up to 4 years to get them out.
Yeah, but Canadians.
That's right. We demand excellence here in the United States.
He wedges the knife in there, gets leverage on it.
You want to cut that adductor muscle off the top, throw that boy overboard,
Show the other oysters what's up.
and then you get a nice, meaty, succulent bad boy right there. Eat it raw, nothing on it to start. Then we'll go into the other stuff.
I mean, nothing on it. This is full of seawater. So you drink all the liquid too?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Electrolytes.
So good.
Okay, it was overwhelming at first. It's a lot to handle. It's a salty blast, briny, but the meat has a nice bite to it. It didn't feel slimy. It's interesting because it's not cold, it's not chilled, but it's super fresh.
Right out of the water.
Overall, I'm impressed. I like it. Let's put some stuff on it now.
All right, let's do it.
So we're putting some sauce on it. What do you got here?
So this is a little Laotian fish sauce from my mysterious friend who lives like an hour and a half north of me.
Well, you had me at Laotian sauce. I'm sold already. A little bit of lemon. Cheers.
That's the ticket.
It's like an Asian Tabasco. It's spicy, lots of powerful flavors. Oofda, that is really nice. You know, if folks haven't been to an oyster bar, it's kind of this, different versions of oysters mixed with booze.
We got a little bit of champagne.
I mean, yeah. He brought a freaking katana. All right, and he looked up how to do this on ChatGPT.
Ready?
Hey!
Doesn't get any better than that. That's it, baby.
Is that something you guys do a lot?
With new guests coming from Vietnam, absolutely.
We have the oyster with caviar. It's a type of caviar I've not seen before. This is from trout?
Smoked trout roe. Nice little bite on them.
Yeah, those eggs are nice. They just pop every time you bite into it. A little explosion, oily, and a wonderful mix with that briny oyster. I don't know, I feel like I just made out with Ariel. Let's wash it down with some champagne.
Cheers to Ariel.
I could get used to this. So this is all you do, basically.
This is it. This is the life.
People think farming's hard. It's not.
It's so simple.
How long have people been farming versus just going out and trying to get wild oysters?
The cultivation of wild oysters has been happening since the beginning of time. Humans have been trying to farm them in some way. They send a whole bunch of boats out, bring them back to shore, and just leave them there, and they can have this plentiful oyster that they can just kind of go back to whenever they want.
So these oysters, where do these head from here?
Everything is sold nationally, so you can go on our website, whitestoneoysters.com, and buy oysters, and we ship anywhere in the country.
I love seeing how different ingredients are sourced. That's kind of what this whole series is all about. But from here, I'm gonna see where these ingredients end up. I think I've had almost every type of banh mi that exists in Vietnam, never with oysters. And that is happening next.
Remember oyster scientist Mike?
That's a 2mm oyster.
Just last year, his team at Oyster Seed Holdings opened a food truck serving an innovative oyster menu, sourced from the very farmers they supply.
These look incredible. What are they flavored with?
But before I get too excited, there is one possible catch. The rarely spoken of seafood bacteria that kills dozens of Americans each year.
Some say that oysters are dangerous. What can you do here to prevent people from suffering negative consequences from eating this delicious food?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'd love to elaborate on it.
Let's start with the eating part. Start by popping open the oyster shells and throwing them on the grill. Now create 3 different flavors with 3 different butters.
We have a chipotle bourbon butter, a sweet chili, and garlic, a little bit of white wine in there.
Oh, white wine, I like that.
Scott, the mastermind behind this food truck, crafted a perfect menu for lab visitors to savor a satisfying meal following their exploration of the oyster hatchery. After just a few minutes, the butter bomb melts, drowning each patch of protein in pure flavor.
I want to try out the garlic one first, and you just dump the whole thing back?
We do.
All right, here we go. Oh my God.
So good.
Oh man. The oysters here are incredible. These obviously buttery, garlicky, incredible flavor, and the texture, the bite changes when you cook it up a bit. It's like a little bit more dense and not at all slimy.
Yeah, and the Chesapeake Bay region has been huge in oysters for centuries.
What is so special about this place?
You know, oysters take on the taste of the place that they are. If you're really close to the ocean, oysters can be really salty. When you get away from the ocean and get a lot of freshwater input into these rivers, you get lots of kind of sweet flavors that blend into that salty flavor.
Speaking of salty, what is this one again?
Sweet chili.
It looks so good. Oh my God, it's buttery, a little bit sweet, not too much of a kick from the chili, very nice. Oh, they're all just so rich and delicious. These are some of the best oysters I've ever had.
One of the reasons that we serve oysters this way is that we're trying to kind of convert people to oyster eaters.
And we were talking about maybe doing a pork banh mi, and we realized that maybe an oyster banh mi would be the way to go.
Well, it's not gonna take much to convince me to try a banh mi, so.
Kick off this recipe by mixing shucked oysters with eggs and Cajun seasoning. Strut the mixture through a sieve to ditch any excess egg goo. Now coat the oysters in a frying batter fortified with Cajun seasoning. Once fully coated, give them a sizzle. Now for our carby vessel. Throw the banh mi on the griddle to toast it up. Fill it up with crispy oysters, pickled daikon, pickled carrots, cilantro, and pickled onions. And finally, a special creamy house sauce to tie everything together.
I think I've had almost every type of banh mi that exists in Vietnam, never with oysters. Let's give it a shot. This is awesome. Super crunchy, a nice tang from those sour pickled vegetables. Who knew? Oysters, man.
Scott knew.
You season the breading that goes on top of it, right? Yeah, I'm just blown away by the texture. It's meaty, and honestly, my first guess wouldn't even be oyster if you just gave it to me and I had a blind taste test. Some people may be apprehensive to try oysters because of the texture, but I've heard people out there who are afraid for their safety.
Vibriosis is an infection primarily transmitted to humans through the consumption of raw seafood, especially oysters.
Every year there are casualties. Some people die from eating oysters, I assume that are raw. Is that correct?
You are correct.
In the USA, the disease claims the lives of 100 people each year.
So my question is, what can people do, or what can you do here to prevent people from suffering negative consequences from eating this delicious food?
Sure. I think the oyster industry is a very safe way to get your food. One of the things that's super important is getting oysters cold. So Vibrio is something that typically happens in the summer months. As long as you get the shell stock down to temperature very quickly, then there's nothing to worry about at all. You can eat them raw, you can eat them cooked, doesn't matter. Anybody who knows that they might have some type of immunocompromised condition should definitely avoid raw shellfish, same as you should avoid other types of raw food. And I mean, there's actually more illnesses and deaths from eating raw vegetables than there are from eating raw shellfish.
Oh wow, hold on, how many people die a year just from choking on food? Number of deaths due to choking in the United States in 2021, 5,000 people. More people are dying from choking on an oyster than from the actual bacteria that it may contain.
It's an unfortunate but very rare occurrence.
Gentlemen, this was incredible. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you coming.
Just 72 miles from the ocean, in Virginia's capital of Richmond, we'll see what oyster magic can be worked in a full-size kitchen with top-shelf ingredients. In this historic metropolis, where the food scene mirrors the diversity of its residents, we find ourselves at a restaurant known as Boathouse.
You know, just when I think I can't eat oysters any other way, I see this, and it looks amazing.
This restaurant, nestled in a repurposed 1860s power plant, offers a stunning setting and serves up the finest locally sourced cuisine.
These specific oysters are Chapel Creek. Interesting thing is, Chapel Creek doesn't have proper refrigeration to hold oysters overnight, so they just drive the hour and 15 minutes, and we have the freshest oysters in town.
For our first course, the oysters are shucked, then lavished with a thick hollandaise sauce. Give them a quick toast in the pizza oven.
Our chef created this as a Christmas Eve feature last year.
Then, to dial up the extravagance, add a delicate sprinkle of caviar.
Oh my God. Oh yeah.
A little salt from the caviar.
Beautiful, creamy sauce.
Kind of a lemon finish.
And there's just like no brininess to it. I'm a guy who can enjoy some brininess, but that is delicious. It's creamy. I feel like I'm eating a seafood version of Eggs Benedict.
That's a good analogy.
This oyster really reminds me of something I've had in Vietnam. Now, in Vietnam, they like to put cheese on the oyster, melt it, and then they eat it like that. This, to me, tastes like a slightly more refined version of that, where it's not necessarily cheesy, but really creamy, kind of coats your mouth, and that taste stays with you. It's excellent. Right here we have the Rockefeller. These oysters are a staple of this region.
The Rockefeller presentation, I think it was invented in Antoine's in New Orleans.
Let's start with the Rockefeller mix. In a sizzling frying pan, they melt butter, then toss in onion, celery, and garlic. Pour in heavy cream and add cayenne pepper, black pepper, and a healthy dose of Parmesan cheese.
So this is a classic presentation. We did not make this up.
And they should taste really lovely.
As it thickens, introduce spinach. Then ladle this Rockefeller concoction over the oysters. Sprinkle on crispy bacon bits, and finally give it a few minutes under high heat.
That bacon is crunchy. It's a perfect crunch to go with that really tender oyster. It's slightly heavy, slightly briny, and so the flavors of the bacon and oyster are really intermingling well. That's excellent. That's really incredible. I'm from Minnesota. It's not a seafood state. We have a red lobster. That's it. But here, we're very close to the ocean. Is this a place where people take pride in seafood?
I think we're spoiled because we have great seafood. It's easily accessible. You know, we have high expectations for it. And we really take pride in who delivers it and the freshness of it and how it looks.
Gentlemen, this is incredible. The food is incredible, and I love what you've done here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
If you love Indian food, then you're gonna love our new channel, Best Ever Food India. Subscribe now for weekly videos showcasing the most unique street food from around the country.
I could actually probably get this one myself.
I can pretend to help.
I didn't know if you wanted to try.
I'm more of a watch and narrate kind of guy. Quick question. So everything here is inside this cage.
Yes.
Is that to protect it from all the birds?
No.
Let's delete that question. And now they've grown this much in 90 days. They've, I don't know, what, like 100 times bigger?
I don't know the exact multiplication.
Mostly I've seen everything from the perspective of the farmer and sourcing and the nurseries, the fertility clinics, and that's how they call it. You know, just a couple of oysters are getting together. They're not making it happen, you know.
So this is a little Laotian fish sauce from my mysterious friend who lives like an hour and a half north of me.
What makes it mysterious?
Well, I've been trying to get a hold of this sauce for like 5 years. A friend of mine finally reluctantly gave me his contact, and I met him in a parking lot, you know, somewhere between DC and Richmond, and you know, sells me like a gallon of it at a time.
I'm sold already. Boom, that is the end of the video. Guys, I tried oysters in 9 different ways. There was this way, and this way, and then this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and this way. I want to thank everybody who was part of this video today, the people in the beginning, the people in the middle part, and especially the people at the end. The seafood tour is going strong, but next, we're going even souther, because in our next video, we're eating a seafood. It's shrimp. I'm just gonna tell you, it's shrimp. I was trying to come up with a cool hook, but it will be so many shrimp. Otherwise, guys, that is it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Peace. Get it? Like I'm an NPC.